When you use NordVPN, it's like you're going online through a tunnel that keeps your information completely hidden. It's super easy to set up with a single click. NordVPN will keep you safe from threats such as malware, trackers, and ads on your computer, phone, and tablet. Now you can get protected risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And you can get 4 months free on a 2-year plan. Get the exclusive deal here by using the link in the description box below. Now, most of you realize that I do a ton of online research for this channel. And when I'm looking for lesser known details, I am tempted to click on sites that might not be that trustworthy. And one of my biggest fears was always that I would wind up getting a virus that would destroy my entire computer, or even wind up getting a hacker who steals my YouTube account somehow. I've seen it happen to people in the past. But now that I have NordVPN, I don't have to worry because they block malicious websites, so I can look up whatever I need to look up without worrying anymore. You should definitely make sure that your online activity is as safe as mine is now. Get the exclusive NordVPN deal by clicking the link in the description box below. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Plus, you get 4 months free on a 2-year plan. Thanks again to NordVPN, and let's get back to tonight's case. Tonight we are traveling to California. Shout out to all my friends in California. This case happened in the year 2020, and it is the case of Amie Harwick. So let's start with some background on Amie. She was born on May 20th, 1981 in Sellersville, Pennsylvania, and was adopted by Tom and Penny Harwick. She had one brother named Chris. She was raised in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. She loved spending time with her huge extended family. Her most favorite time of the year was when they would all get together for the yearly cookie baking day. Amie loved music, especially heavy metal. She also loved horror movies and taxidermy. She even collected things stored in formaldehyde jars, and she would display them and show them to her friends. Amie was definitely a very unique person. Friends said she was quirky and fun. She graduated she had to work her way through all these years and years and years of education. And she did so by being a go-go dancer and a Playboy model. In the year 2010, while she was working as a dancer, she met a man named Gareth Pursehouse. He was about 3 years older than her. He was an IT specialist and an aspiring comedian who also worked as a photographer. He was 6'4" and had classic good looks. And she really fell for him, and he fell for her. They bonded over the fact that they had both been adopted. But meanwhile, Amie's friends did not really like Gareth very much. They saw him in a much different way than she did. One said, quote, "To me, Gareth was just another LA Ken doll failing to become an actor or comedian. There was nothing special about him." Another friend of Amie's said that Gareth reminded her of Ted Bundy. The friend said, quote, "He did a lot of mirroring. You'd say, 'I love chocolate milkshakes,' and he'd say, 'Oh my God, I love chocolate milkshakes.'" She compared Gareth to aliens from Third Rock from the Sun, who were, quote, "trying to imitate how he thought humans behaved," end quote. Well, anyway, after a time, the relationship turned sour. Gareth began physically abusing Amie, and he would always apologize afterwards and say he would never do it again, but he always did it again. So, in June 2011, Amie filed her first restraining order against him. She claimed that on multiple occasions he had, quote, "choked me, suffocated me, pushed me against walls, kicked me, dropped me to the ground with force, restrained me, slammed my head into the ground, and punched me with a closed fist." Now, this request was ultimately dismissed for what they call lack of prosecution, which may mean that she didn't follow up on it. So that is not completely clear, but it's possible that she kind of let it go. But she filed for another restraining order in 2012, which was granted, and she said that he had pulled her out of a car, a moving car, giving her a bloody nose and leaving her on the freeway. She also said that he had broken into her apartment many times. He had smashed her picture frames and then sent her a text afterwards saying, quote, "Things will get worse," end quote. So she had that restraining order for 5 years until it expired, which is what happens in California. And she didn't bother to renew it, possibly because she didn't want to have to take him to court and see him and, get him riled up. Possibly, we don't really know why she didn't renew it. But all the while, ever since she filed for the first restraining order, somebody was harassing her online. And everyone knew who that someone was. It was always an anonymous post or was, but it was most probably Gareth. And he was doing some pretty hurtful things to her, posting slanderous comments and trying to ruin her reputation in the professional world. She always lived in fear that he would come back and try to hurt her. In fact, when she would leave town, she asked a friend to watch her cat because she was afraid to leave her cat alone, thinking that Gareth would come and kill the cat. At one point, Amie lost her job working with juvenile offenders after someone sent her employer nude photos of her from her modeling days. After she lost that position, she became a provider of relationship and sex therapy, which she found very fulfilling. She treated people with marginalized sexual identities, such as sex workers, kinky or non-monogamous people. And she was seen as kind of a rare gem because most treatment providers would be likely to judge clients who had that kind of background, even though they're taught not to judge, but it would still come across that they were judging, or that's what the clients would feel. But with Amie, everyone felt very comfortable, very accepted. She also appeared regularly on podcasts, on TV, and she had her own YouTube channel where she would discuss her work in the field. In 2014, she wrote a book called The New Sex Bible for Women, The Complete Guide to Sexual Self-Awareness and Intimacy. She also started working with Pineapple Support, which is an organization of sex work positive mental health professionals that was founded after a rash of adult industry suicides. She served on the board of directors for Rock to Recovery, which was an organization that helps musicians in treatment through an innovative approach to music therapy. In 2017, she began dating Carey. According to Drew, they met at a party that was thrown by a producer, and shortly after they had their very first date, he brought her to Disneyland, and they had a wonderful time. Carey said, quote, "I was so amazed by her. I was telling people at work, wow, I met this great girl." They became engaged in February of 2018, but unfortunately, they broke up and ended the engagement in November of 2018, and it's not completely clear why they broke up. Neither one of them has really said, but Drew has said that it was amicable, that when they broke up on good terms. He said that they had, quote, "some problems. We went to therapy as much as we could, and finally just had to call it a day. And it was really upsetting for both of us," end quote. Now, it was said that while she was dating Carey, since he was such a public figure, she would often be with him in photos that would be in magazines or online. And every time one of these photos would appear somewhere, she would receive an increased amount of harassment online. On January 17th, 2020, Amie was scheduled to appear on a panel about mental health and so she got up and she went with him to sit down and talk it through further in private. Now, when the event was over, Amie discussed it with her friend, saying that she, felt very, very shook up from the whole thing, even though she appeared so calm and collected. And they talked about ways she could protect herself, like by getting pepper spray or changing the locks. And Amie did go ahead and do both of those things in the days that followed this event. She also wrote herself an email, almost like a journal entry, right after the event, to express how it made her feel to be confronted by Gareth like that. So in this email, she wrote, quote, "Today I felt very scared. I didn't think he was going to attack me in that moment, but this clearly showed me how obsessed he was. He told me that he thinks about me every day, and every day he cries. He told me he lost his job when we broke up because he couldn't work. He told me that no matter what he did, he couldn't stop obsessing over me. He told me that I was a cheater and a liar because he thought we were still together when I believed that we were broken up. He recited text messages that I had sent from this time frame about 9 years ago. He recited the date, who they were to, and exactly what was said word for word. I couldn't believe it. I was very scared. He said he wasn't able to move on. He said he thinks about me constantly. I'm pretty nervous that I'm more on his radar now. It terrifies me that he's been obsessed with me for 9 years. Thinks about me every day, can't move on, cries and throws tantrums in this way. He's focused on harming me." End quote. On February 12th, 2020, Amie sent a text to Carey, and she said, quote, "Hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about, forgiveness, and I would love to get together with you and talk." And Drew replied, "Yeah, I would love to do that. I love you." Then 2 days after she sent that text, it was Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2020, and she had plans to go with her friends to a burlesque show. While she was at the show, at around 9 p.m., her roommate, whose name is Michael Herman, she lived with this man. They were just friends, and he had a bedroom in the downstairs. I'm not sure what the financial arrangements were, but it doesn't really matter. He happened to live in her house at this time. So it was about 9 p.m. when he was awoken by the sound of a glass breaking. And he thought to himself, oh, it must be Amie. She broke a glass, and he just rolled over and went back to sleep. Then, at around 1 a.m., Amie pulled into her driveway. She was returning home. It was now February 15th, 2020. And she texted her friend asking her to send Amie photos from the evening that they had just spent together. And then she got out of the car and headed inside. Moments later, she was viciously attacked in her own home. Apparently, Gareth was, as they say, lying in wait for her. He had been that sound at 9 p.m. that woke the roommate. He had broken through the glass doors of the home, and then he had stayed in the home and waited from 9 p.m. until 1 a.m. for Amie to come in. And as soon as she came in, he attacked her access to this house. And the police received like a lot of criticism after people saw the body cam footage, just because they didn't take him extremely serious, you know. But ultimately, the police wound up climbing the fence, and that is when they found Amie laying below her bedroom balcony, which was a third floor balcony, laying on the ground. She was alive, but just barely. She was struggling to breathe. It had been a 20-foot drop from the balcony, and they noticed that she had severe injuries and marks on her neck, and signs that she had possibly been strangled before falling from the balcony. And obviously she was taken to the hospital immediately, but sadly she died at around 3 a.m. from her injuries. And when the police took a look at her home, they saw signs of, quote, a violent struggle, including blood on a bedroom door and a trail of beads from a rosary necklace she was wearing that night, going from her TV room through her bedroom and onto the balcony. So it appears that she came in, Gareth was trying to strangle her, her necklace broke, the beads followed her in a trail from one room to the next, and all out onto the balcony. So everyone who was interviewed said, you need to look at Gareth Pursehouse because he would be the one who did it. Nobody had any questions in their mind. Now, Amie had an autopsy, of course, and it showed defensive wounds on her arms and hands. There were broken blood vessels around her eyes, which could be evidence of having been strangled. And she had bruises on her neck. Her pelvis was shattered, and she sustained brain and liver damage from the fall. Cause of death was blunt force injuries to her head and torso from the fall. Pursehouse was arrested shortly thereafter, and he was charged with burglary and first-degree murder, with a special circumstance allegation of lying in wait, and he was initially released on bail or bond of $2 million. He was able to post it, but they rearrested him 24 hours later with no bail warrant. So I'm not sure why they let him out and then they took him back. Maybe it was because they came to realize he was too much of a danger. So he pled not guilty, and his trial began in August of 2023. There was a delay due to COVID. Now, prosecutors presented DNA evidence that they found in the house. There was blood from the glass door that had broke. There was blood in the area, which matched the DNA of Pursehouse. And Purshouse's DNA was under the fingernails of Amie as well. And a neighbor's doorbell camera captured what appeared to be Pursehouse going towards the house right before 9 and leaving the house right after 1 a.m. Now, Purshouse's defense attorney claimed that he was a man in crisis because he had no closure with Amie after their breakup. So this lawyer showed a series of text messages where Pursehouse repeatedly contacted Amie because he was unsatisfied with her assertions that they should both move darkest secret to her. The defense claimed that when he went to her house that night, yes, he broke in, and yes, he waited for her. But not to kill her. He wanted to talk to her. And by the way, there was also a syringe filled with nicotine found at the house, at the crime scene. It had not been used, but this amount of nicotine, if injected, would kill a person. Okay? So, he had brought that syringe with him because he was going to inject himself with it to take his own life if she wouldn't have him back. That was the plan, according to the defense. And he did not push her off the balcony. She fell because she was trying to escape him, and she fell. So he did not murder her. It was an accident. But the prosecution said that the reason that he was there was for one reason only: to kill her. They said that he had brought the nicotine so that he could kill her with it, and that it must have taken him some research to figure out that this was a substance that would not have been found in an autopsy unless someone had looked for it. So it's not regularly tested for. So if he would have just quietly broken in and just given her this injection, possibly nobody would ever have known. But since she, I guess, freaked out when she saw him and they got into a physical confrontation and he started strangling her and she started screaming, and that woke the roommate, and then the roommate screamed, they feel that that scared Gareth, and he felt, I gotta take care of this right now and get out of here, or I'm gonna get caught. And so he threw her off the balcony and left. So I guess the jury believed the prosecution's story more than they believed the defense's story, because he was found guilty of all the charges. He faces life in prison, but he has not yet been sentenced. Now, after Amie's murder, Drew Carey said the following, quote, "After Amie's murder, I took a week off. Really, I couldn't function. My first day back, we taped the high school show for Kids Week. It was all high school kids. It was my very first show back, and everybody knew what happened to me. And so I took time during the break to talk to these kids. I wish he never did it. I wish he never met her. I really try to practice instant forgiveness and unconditional love. The closest you can get to that, the better you are." End quote. And that is the case. What are your thoughts? I will share some of mine. First of all, rest in peace to Amie Harwick. She was only 38 years old when she was murdered. My heart goes out to her family and friends. Now, what can I say about this case? It is so frustrating to see how Amie was stalked and harassed for 9 years by this man. And there was nothing she could really do to truly protect herself from him. And we often talk about having stricter laws regarding stalking, and that sounds great, but unhinged, deranged stalker who does not care about the law. What difference would it make if there were laws in place to keep him from his victim, his potential victim? There was a law that you can't kill people, but yet he went ahead and he killed her. You know what I'm saying? People who are this obsessed and are this compelled to harm someone, they don't really care about the consequences that much. And you see in a lot of cases they go ahead and take their own lives at the same time as they take the life of the victim. So they're really not that concerned with what happens to them very often, or they're really not thinking about it. So I don't know if stalking laws would help in a situation like this. I mean, yes, for milder cases, it would be helpful to have stricter stalking laws for sure. But how do you really stop someone who is intent on harming you? So what can we learn from the tragedy that happened to Amie? Is there anything that she could have done differently? Not to blame her at all, but to learn from what happened to her. Believe me, I'm not blaming her at all. But what could we learn? The one thing that I think we could take away from this is be extremely, extremely careful of who you become involved with. And don't ignore any red flags. Because right away her friends saw red flags. They didn't like him. Someone said he seemed like Ted Bundy. And maybe she knew that. I'm sure she knew how her friends felt. And maybe she saw what they were talking about too. But she liked other aspects about him, and so she just let those flags just kind of pass, you know? Maybe. But isn't it unfortunate that she got involved with a man who turned out to be a monster, an absolute monster? I just wish she would have gotten out of that relationship before it got to the point where Gareth had become so fixated on her. So,